Virtualizations. My name is Grant Lenahan, and I'm a partner in Appledore Research Group, which is an analyst firm covering the software stack and looking at the impact of virtualization on the operations of network operators. So very appropriate to this. We have a great panel this afternoon, so I hope you will enjoy them. We have Ryoki Nakamura from NTT. And he's going to be talking about innovations that occur beyond NFV as we build on our virtualization base. We have Zhang Yi from China Unicom, who's going to be talking about future plans in China Unicom's network for SDN and NFV. We also have Clark Whitty from Spirent. And while that sounds very much like a test vendor, I happen to know that Clark has spent a lot of time in major operators and knows both sides of this business very well. And he's going to be looking at some of the test and automation opportunities in the networks. And we also have Jeremy Rosbach from CA Technologies, who's going to be talking about tracking performance and fault management in multi-layered software-defined network environments. And that's a great topic because, one of our big challenges is that we have a decoupled, abstracted environment where the things that we monitor get up and move around on their own. And that's the great thing about virtualized environments, but it's also one of the complex things about virtualized environments. I'm going to take just a couple of moments and present a little bit of background that I hope just frames the what and the why. Appledore Research Group decided to say, rather than just look at what's changing, let's look at first principles and say what's driving the business and what does that say about what operations need to be in the future. Because certainly just implementing MANO and leaving OSS BSS the way they are today is not probably a recipe for success. So, by the way, if people want more information on this, I don't expect you to be able to read the charts, from the back of the room. It's the points that are important, and you can always see me to discuss it or get the information. But we actually used a Fisher-Price substitution model to look at what we believed the substitution period was going to be. And this chart shows that it's about 17 years in our estimation. Might be less, might be a little more. The point is it doesn't matter. It means we're going to be living in a hybrid environment where we need to deal with both services that transit virtualized and non-virtualized, and we're going to have a mixture of virtualized and non-virtualized services for some time in the future. So we think that's a very important point that needs to guide how we think about our operations as we transition. We also wanted to, when we went through this, we did some pretty hard work because we wanted to recognize that not everything was virtualizable. So we went through and made sure things were sub-additive. But one of the interesting things that we found is when we came out of it, if you looked at all of the capital that a typical network operator, and that's both fixed, mobile, North American, European, Asian, it's sort of an amalgamation, employed, only about 43% of it was stuff that, in our opinion, expert or not, it was practical to virtualize. You can't virtualize a truck or a building or a pole or a hole, right? So there are limits to all of this. We also took a look, and again, an amalgamation. So this is the classic chart that's almost correct for everyone but precisely wrong for any specific operator. And this is a breakdown of where the money goes in a network operator at a high level using mostly public sources but validated through interviews and briefings. And the only point I want everybody to recognize here, because I've got a 100-page report out on this, is capital on an annualized basis is actually a pretty small part. And therefore today's topic, which is operations, is the big part. Now some of that may be not things that are touched by virtualization, but the business models will be impacted. So we think that's very, very important. Another thing I wanted to mention, this is courtesy of Microsoft, by the way, is the overall cost that you can get as you go from mainframe to client server to cloud. And no one's surprised, cloud's better and cheaper, that's why we're all doing it. I think what's very important looking at it, though, is the cost curve changes. You actually start with a higher investment to get all that cloud infrastructure in place. And then your economies of scale are gigantic. What does that say? It means you need to operate at large scale, and you need to have single resource pools so that you can get a lot of these economies of scale, or at least a very small number of resource pools. It's the economics that do it to us. And again, I'm happy to debate it. I don't have all the answers, but I think it's a fascinating topic. We actually went and modeled it in the same report and said effectively the same thing, right? Bigger initial investment, bigger economies of scale, and that will drive very different business decisions. If you can introduce a new service for almost nothing, if you can turn up a service on demand for almost nothing with no wrenches turned and no trucks rolled, changes a lot of the assumptions that you make about what kind of a service you can sell to your customers profitably. And it also says things about the level of self-service and the level of automation that are going to need to occur within the network to make this reality as opposed to wishful thinking by some guy in a suit standing in front of you. And finally, so that I don't eat into the time, we actually looked business process by business process and a bunch of the things from virtualization. And we asked the question, what parts of the stack are affected? And the answer is lots. They're affected in different ways. Again, all this information is available. They're affected in different ways, but you've got stuff down at the lower levels that are new functionality you need to introduce with NFV and SDN and X as a service. But you've also got things like API gateways and self-care portals and analytics that exist today, but have to do different things or have different demands put on them. And so I wanted that as a framing, and maybe some of the speakers who have much more hands-on experience. Most of you are either from operators or recently from operators doing this, can comment on the degree to which you've experienced it or the degree to which maybe you want to debate this with me, at which point I'd welcome that. So with that, thank you very much, and I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Nakamura from NTT. Please give him a hand, and Mr. Nakamura.